If you've watched our videos for a while, you know that I am keen on keeping our RV protected for potential power issues. So I want to give a little background on that just to kind of help me explain why this new device is so great. Per usual, I will have chapter markers down below, so feel free to skip around if you want, but I recommend you stick with me through this portion so I can kind of explain what these things do and why. Up to this point, for us to get this good, clean, reliable, error-free power that we need in our RV, I have relied on these two devices from Hughes. First up is this first generation Power Watchdog from Hughes. Now there is a newer model of this with some extra features, but it's not going to really affect what I want to talk about in this video. But the first thing this does is surge protection. You're going to see a lot about surge protection, and you got to have a surge protector, yada, yada, yada. And there are a lot of inexpensive, at least relatively inexpensive models out there, but those are not going to protect you from the main enemy of your RV's power systems, and that's low voltage. The reason low voltage is such a big issue with RVs is because there are a lot of old parks out there with crappy power systems, and low voltage is not that uncommon. And what happens when you get low voltage in a system with things on it like high power items like AC units is those AC units are going to draw a certain amount of power regardless in the terms of wattage. So let's say you have a 1500 watt AC, it needs that 1500 watts regardless. Watts are made up of voltage times amperage. And what happens is if you get into a park with a low voltage situation, the amperage has to crank up to make up the difference. And that amperage means more heat, and it can also mean a burnout for your AC's compressor and other items on your RV. So what this thing does is if you get below a certain threshold, I believe it's about 104 volts, this thing will shut off power to your RV completely. And that's to protect it, because when you get down around that range, the amperage is having to crank up high enough that it can damage your equipment. In addition to surges and high and low voltage, this thing also checks for wiring problems. That could be a serious problem with your RV, like an open ground, open neutral. Open ground can be really dangerous. You can actually shock yourself on the skin of your RV. So this thing checks for all of those things and shuts off power when anything is out of range. That's the EPO, or emergency power off, part of this, and that's what really sets this aside from a surge protector. And that's all great, but what if you're in an RV park where your low voltage situation isn't temporary from some problem? We stayed in Las Vegas in the summer a couple of years ago, and we were at an RV park that was really poorly powered. And when you run into a situation like that, the voltage is just low. And what we had in that situation was the voltage was so low, it was causing the amperage to go so high that it was tripping breakers prematurely. Nothing would stay turned on. We had trouble keeping our ACs going, and we had to go to some serious extremes to keep our ACs on, and even that wasn't really enough. What we could have used in that situation is this guy right here. And I'm only going to pick him up for a second because it's heavy. And this is an autoformer, or an auto transformer. And what this thing will do is bump up the voltage from the pedestal before it gets to your RV. And no, contrary to some rumors you might have heard out there, it does not steal power from your neighbors. I'm going to get into a little more detail into that at the end of the video for those who are interested, but it doesn't. This thing will take your input voltage, and when it gets below a certain level, we'll give it a boost and boost it by about 9 to 10%. So that crappy 103 volts that we had in Vegas could have been bumped up to about 113 volts when we had that situation in Vegas. That would have been usable and just saved us a ton of headaches. But that's when we bought this thing, and that's when we made a video on it way back in 2022. Since then, we have carried both, and I even configured our new RV so that these could be kind of tucked away and hidden in our front bay up here. And our Power Watchdog remained connected all the time, while our voltage booster was just there and ready and waiting. And we have had to use it several times, and it has really served its purpose very well. So we've been lugging around both of these since 2022, and I had always wished that there was a better kind of all-in-one option. Well, the wait is over, because now we've got this guy, which is also pretty heavy, but not as much. This is the 50 amp Hughes Watchdog Power Center. These things always have long names that are hard to remember, but this is the Power Center, and it is an all-in-one device. We were lucky enough to get this advanced unit from Hughes so we could test it out before they released it. We're probably a few days behind them releasing it, but I wanted to get this out to you guys ASAP because it's really super cool. It does everything that these two things do, plus more. So we're going to hook this up and do some experiments with it and just test its functionality, make sure it does what it says it does. You know I love experiments. And then we're going to install them in the RV and kind of test them out in line in real use. Before we get into that testing, I want to take a quick sponsor break and talk about something that's become more and more important to me as I've gotten older, and that is my health and particularly what I eat. I'm coming up fast on 57. I know, I don't look it right, but I'm coming up fast on 57, and it's more important than ever for me to make good, healthy food choices, and that's not always easy. To that end, Tara and I both drink AG1 every morning, and it's an easy way to increase our intake of vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants, especially when we're on the road. AG1 is a comprehensive nutrition supplement with more than 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food source ingredients. It's NSF certified for sport, gluten-free, dairy-free, and works with vegan, paleo, and keto lifestyles, all with less than 1 gram of naturally occurring sugar. Since I started taking AG1 every morning, my digestion has improved. I have more energy. I don't even need as much coffee as I used to. Plus, it supports my immune system, metabolism, and nervous system, which gives me peace of mind whether we're on the road or whether we're here at the cabin. It's super, super simple. 1 scoop into the shaker, you shake it, you drink it, you clean your shaker, and you're done. They also have some new berry, citrus, and tropical flavors you can try. I mean, I like the original, but I've also tried the flavors and they're good also. Thank you to AG1 for just a great product and also for supporting our channel. You can support our channel and your own health by clicking the QR code on the screen or the link below to get a welcome kit with your first AG1 subscription. So get a kit and try it out. I really think you're gonna like it. Now let's get into testing this bad boy here. I'm excited about this. As I mentioned, this Watchdog Power Center is the all-in-one, end-all, be-all, super solution that I've been waiting for. So of course it's a surge protector, and it will protect your RV from surges in amperage and voltage spikes from things like storms and things like that. What's really cool about the surge protection in this unit is the surge module is a separate unit that is user replaceable. And why that's important is you can kind of think of an analogy between the surge module and a sponge. A sponge can only soak up so much before its usefulness is gone. Unfortunately, this analogy doesn't carry as far as squeezing out the sponge, so forget about that part. But the idea here is it can only soak up so many surges. Those could be 1,000 small surges over the course of a year. It could be 1 big surge from a lightning strike. But when that happens, you'll get an E9 error code on this guy, and it'll tell you it needs to be replaced. You can pick one up. Last I checked, they're about 50 bucks. You can swap it out yourself, which is awesome because it restores the surge capacity of this thing for about $50 instead of having to buy a whole new unit. Love that. In addition to protecting from surges, a lot like the Watchdog, this thing protects from open ground, open neutral, overcurrent, reverse polarity, current on ground. It checks for all these bad situations before it even turns on power to your RV. If it detects any of them, you get an easy little error code on there that you can look up and know exactly what's wrong. Now, like the old Watchdog that we had in there, this thing does protect against high and low voltages with emergency power off. But that range is much greater on the low end because the transformer, the Autoformer, is built into this system. So while the Watchdog has a range of, I think, 104 to 132 volts where it will cut off power on either side, this thing will go down as low as 96 volts to 132 volts. That's because the Autoformer is built into this. And when the voltage gets below a certain level, I think around 112, 113 volts, it's going to give about a 9% boost to that voltage. That allows your input voltage from the park to go down to 96 volts before it has to kick in the EPO and shut off power to protect your RV. It's awesome having all of this stuff in one package. couple more key features before we test that I want to talk about. Like our older Watchdog, you can connect to this thing over Bluetooth and monitor your voltage and amperage and wattage and everything on each line. You can also set a power meter feature, which is great if you're on a RV park where you're metered, like a monthly service. So you can actually verify what the park says you owe is actually what you used. It's also super handy if you are mooch docking and staying at a friend's house and plugged into their power. Oh, hookups, yeah! You can monitor your power, figure out how many kilowatt hours you use, and pay them for the use of their power. But in addition to the Bluetooth access, this thing has Wi-Fi. So if you've got a system with Wi-Fi like we do with our internet system, or if you've got Starlink or whatever, if you've got Wi-Fi, you can connect this thing to the Wi-Fi and access it from anywhere in the world. You can even turn the power off and on remotely from anywhere if you wanted to. I'm not really sure what situation would arise where you'd want to do that, but it's nice to know you can do it. That's it for the show and tell. Let's do some testing on this thing and then go install it. So I've got a variable transformer here that's going to let me dial the voltage up and down right here. I've got this dog boned down because obviously 50 amp doesn't plug into this little 110 volt normal plug here. I do have my meter on the output so I can validate the readings on the front of the unit itself. So I'm going to set this to 110 right here, and when I turn this on, that should get us around the same between input and output voltage. You can hear this just clicked on. I have a nice little display here. The output voltage, when it's not in boost mode, is still boosted by about 2%. And then when it gets below that, I think 112, 113 volts, it should boost that up. And then if it drops below, 96 volts, it should shut off completely. So let's test that lower end first. We're at 121 volts. It's saying 124 out. I'm seeing 123.6, so that agrees. And we're gonna see the voltage slowly go down. Oh, I just hit below 113, and it's in boost mode. I'm gonna crank it back up to 115. It goes out of boost mode. That is cool. So let's see if we can figure out exactly when it goes down. A little more. There it goes. Yeah, so right when it crosses the threshold between 113 and 112 volts, it gives me a boost. So you can see that my input voltage is 112 and I'm getting 122 out. That's cool. So now let's see what it happens if it gets down below a threshold that it can even boost. 97. It's telling me 105 volts out. That is confirmed on the meter here. And we get down a little bit lower. 96. Ooh, it's right on the edge. 104 volts out. A little bit, boom. Error E1, which if I look that up, it's going to be low voltage, and that makes sense. Now what this thing will do, I'm going to crank the input voltage back up to around our starting point, around normal voltage, around 122 volts. This thing should auto reset after 90 seconds, so we'll wait. I didn't set a timer, but my clock on my phone here says it's been about a minute since I hit record. Oh, there it goes. So it was about 90 seconds, and then boom, power's back on, 125 volts. Now, I don't know if I can go up high enough in voltage to trigger this, but let's try. Crank it up. I think it's 136 volts is it when it will cut off. Oh, E1 error code again, so that E1 must be over or under voltage. Now, unfortunately, voltage is really the only thing that I have the equipment here to test. I don't really have anything that could, mess with the frequency or anything, but that is another part of what it monitors. If the frequency gets out of range, it'll shut off just like if the voltage gets out of range. Successful test. This thing does exactly what it said it was going to. I really love the display on this thing. It shows you your input and output voltages and your amps, your current draw. Of course, you can see all that in the app too. This one before, all I had were some lights to kind of indicate what was going on. So the display on this is really nice. Got this thing hooked up to the app. But make sure you get the right app, and then you just scan the little QR code on the front here, adds it right in, easy peasy. So we're gonna go get this installed in our front bay up here. You're gonna see that I've actually got a 50 amp plug in here that runs from the 50 amp cord and allows me to put things in line. So installing this should be super easy. You can install this internally like I'm doing here, and in fact you would do it the exact same way, but you can also put this out by the power pedestal, set it on the ground. This thing is waterproof, but I would definitely lock this thing up. Put one that I recommend down below. Simple bicycle lock, put it through this handle, wrap it around the pedestal so it can't be stolen. Let's go up here and install this thing in the front bay. This plug comes straight from the power cable. So that way I can plug anything in line here. Now this used to have our Watchdog laying in here, and you can see it was kind of bolted right here. But I took that out to obviously show it and make the video. So I've got it in bypass mode, which was part of the point of this. If any of this equipment ever goes bad, I can just bypass it like it is here. This is coming from the power cord, and then this feeds into the system for power and all that good stuff. So let's go get the power center and put it up in here. It should fit into this whole system nicely. Let's go turn on power, and we'll see what this thing looks like in the app, and then we'll see if we can get it connected to Wi-Fi. We can see now that everything on the front there matches what I'm seeing here. Let's test the power off feature. So I'm hitting power off, confirm shutting power off. Boom, power's off to the RV. That's pretty neat. All right, let's turn power back on. Boom, that's fast. All right, let's see about getting this thing connected to Wi-Fi. Oh, one little note here also. One of the things this thing checks for is a problem with the neutral line. Earlier ones did not do that, but apparently there's something about the way our inverter is set up that it triggers it and makes it look like we don't have a neutral in our RV. I contacted Hughes about this, and they said that sometimes you can get a false indicator if you've got the exact same current on both lines, or it uses something like that to detect it. I know we've got a good neutral in here, so I disabled that. They knew that might be hit or miss with some RVs with power systems in it, so they put in the option here to enable and disable that feature, so we have done that. Okay, it looks like it found CL main because that's what's on our phones. So let me put in the password. Oh, the little indicator here switched over. I am now connected over Wi-Fi to the device. Interface looks exactly the same. Now to test this, I'm going to turn off Bluetooth completely on my phone. Works great. Being able to access this part of the power system and this thing right here and just see that we do have good power to the RV, that's really cool. Let's try to power it off. Still works. And back on again. So that is pretty cool. It's nice now that I have this one device up here. It's going to take care of high voltage, low voltage. It's going to boost low voltage, which is awesome. And I've got it all in one nice little package here, so I really like that. Installed, done. And like I said, you can hook this up on a pedestal if you don't have this whole system, which most people aren't, let's face it. But if you do want to install it inside, Hughes does have some accessories to have a box like this put on the inside. It's going to take some wiring, and you need to kind of know what you're doing there. So if you want to do that, either know what you're doing or have a professional do it for you. So real quick before I let you go, I promised I would talk a little bit about the whole stealing power misconception. And that's really what it is. It's a misconception. It's based on rumors. There's really no math behind it. And let me see if I can explain really quickly. First of all, the core of this is Ohm's law. That is physics. It's going to apply no matter what. So using that, Ohm's law is your volts times your amps gives you watts. And of course you can switch the equation around, and let's pretend we've got 3,000 watts, 3 kilowatts being pulled by maybe 2 ACs, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And let's just say we have a good power supply that's giving us 120 volts. That means to get to that 3,000 watts, we have to pull 25 amps using that equation. Now, let's just say the voltage is 100 volts. Using the same math, we now have to pull 25 amps to our ACs from the RV power system. So that increase in amperage is going to happen regardless, simply because we have to get the watts that we need to run our systems. Now let's do the same thing and let's put an autoformer in place like this, or that standalone, right? And let's just pretend it can bump all the way from 100 to 120. That's not the exact math, but just for sake of argument. You still need 3,000 watts in your RV regardless. So it's going to pull 25 amps going from here into the RV. You're still going to pull 30 amps from the park power supply. So nothing changes to the park power supply. All you've really done by using an autoformer is change where that increase in amperage stops. That's the key. You want to stop that increase in amperage here at this guy and not at your AC systems, because pulling that extra amperage there is what can cause damage. So I hope that makes sense. It's not drawing any extra amperage from the RV park. You're not stealing power from anyone. You're going to pull that 30 amps regardless. This thing just makes sure that that extra amperage stops here. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click that thumbs up button. Please subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you next week.